More than any other stroke, breaststroke creates a ton of resistance, and that's why breaststroke is the slowest stroke. Well, that means there's a lot of opportunities to make mistakes and swim slower. There's also a lot of opportunity to make improvements in alignment, and that's going to result in a lot more speed. So if your swimmers are trying to improve their breaststroke, rather than just trying to pull or kick more effectively, they need to focus on their alignment if they want to improve their breaststroke speed. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. Today, we're talking horizontal alignment in breaststroke, and just like with every skill, it's going to take a systematic approach if you really want to create improvement and you want to see progress. You can't just do one or two drills. You have to understand what's happening, why it's important, the key skills involved, what are the challenges in helping swimmers improve that skill, and then we're using several different solutions in combination in order to create the change that you're looking for. When you want to create a change, you have to know what you're trying to accomplish, the strategies you're going to use, and then build that into your training. I'm going to show you how to make it happen to improve horizontal alignment in breaststroke. So why does horizontal alignment matter in breaststroke? Well, breaststroke creates more resistance than any other stroke. That's why it's the slowest of all the strokes, and that's why it requires more energy than any other stroke. Resistance slows breaststrokers down, and it makes breaststroke a lot harder. Well, that's obviously not good news. The flip side is, because the resistance is so high, if you can help swimmers eliminate even just a little bit of their resistance by improving their alignment, they're going to go a lot faster. And it's going to be free speed in the sense that it actually makes swimming easier rather than harder. If they were to learn how to get a more powerful pull, that will improve their speed, but it requires more energy in order to execute that pull. If you can help them be more streamlined, more aligned, well, now it's going to be actually easier to swim breaststroke, so they're going to be faster and they're going to be able to hold it together more because they're not going to use as much energy. That's a double win. The better their alignment is, the less resistance they have, the more speed they're going to have, and the more endurance they're going to have, again, because swimming is easier. So if swimmers can improve this skill, there's a lot of benefits in terms of going faster in competition. So what is it? Well, breaststrokers need to establish a horizontal position in between each stroke cycle. They want to be level, flat on the surface. They want to be as straight as possible. Just like when you put your hand out the window, if you have it pointed straight up, there's going to be a ton of resistance. If you have it straight, there's going to be a lot less resistance. And the same principle applies here with breaststrokers. They want to get straight after each stroke cycle. They need to return to that position and establish that position in between each stroke. Then they want to deviate from that position as little as possible. So they don't want the hips to drop low. They don't want to come up super high. The hips have to stay in line. They want to try to minimize the impact of the breath on their body position. Now, obviously, they have to breathe, and there's going to be some impact, but the smaller it is, the less resistance it'll create, the more effective and the faster they're going to go. Now, to recover the kick, they're going to have to bring their legs forward. The longer they can wait to do that, the less resistance they're going to create as well, because when they do that, it's necessary to get a great kick, but it's kind of like putting on the brakes. So if they do it slow and they do it for a long period of time, well, they're creating more resistance than they have to. And the last key aspect is they have to, no matter how fast they're going, no matter what their stroke rate is, they got to get back into alignment. They got to get straight in between each stroke cycles. Even when swimmers are sprinting at the highest level, they're getting back into alignment. Even if it's only for a tenth of a second, they're doing it between each stroke cycle. So we've gone over why it matters and what it is. Let's check out what it looks like. So we'll watch two swimmers here, one swimming over 200 meters and one swimming over 100 meters. So you can see how the same principles apply, even though the rates are going to be dramatically different. So if we watch this swimmer here, you can see he's taking his pull, and look how long those legs are. He's not rushing the kick up. He's keeping everything in his line as long as possible. And second thing too, when he takes this breath here, watch how the hips don't drop. Everything stays right up at the surface, even when he comes up with the body. And so his leg comes fast here, and then he gets out of that position. And again, now he's back into alignment after the stroke. So he's not extending the length of the breath. When he does breathe, he keeps the hips up. And then the last aspect of it is when he recovers the legs, he waits to do so and then does so really fast in order to minimize the time that he's in those positions. So the key thing here is that he's going to get back into alignment right here in between each stroke cycle. So those are the really important aspects of it, is minimizing any loss of alignment and then reestablishing and getting back into this great alignment in between each stroke to ensure that he keeps his resistance he's creating as low as possible. Now let's check out the same skills in a swimmer over 100 meters. And so right here, you can see she's back into alignment. Her hips are up, her head's down. She's not pausing, she's not gliding at all, but she's finding a way to get back into that position. And then when she breathes there, watch the hips. They don't really drop at all. If anything, they might come up a little bit. And so she's maintaining alignment through the breath as well. Next aspect is, so she's starting to pull. Watch how long it takes for her to recover the legs. She's minimizing the amount of time she does that, and she's minimizing the resistance she creates when she creates that setup and recovers the legs. So again, gets back into alignment there. Everything's straight on the surface. Even at a really high stroke rate, you can see her stroke rate's high, but she's getting back into it really fast. She's not losing position of the hips when she breathes, and she's recovering the legs fast to minimize the impact of the leg recovery on the resistance that she creates. So even at really high stroke rates, probably almost twice as what the previous swimmer was using, she's able to demonstrate and establish those same skills. So the more swimmers can maintain their alignment and the more they can get back into alignment with each stroke, the more effective they're going to be at minimizing resistance and creating a lot of speed. So what makes improving alignment so difficult? The biggest idea is that it's about subtraction rather than addition. You're trying to remove unnecessary movements as opposed to add necessary or better movements. And so while creating propulsion is about more, minimizing resistance is about less. It's about what not to do. And that's generally not how we think about movement. It's always a goal-oriented thing where we're trying to do something. In this case, we're trying to get rid of things. Alignment's also subtle. Small changes can make a big difference. A small change in hip position can make a big difference. A small change in the breath can make a big difference. And a lot of times, they're really small. And it's something that you as a coach can't even necessarily see. But swimmers have to learn how to feel it. And if they can feel it, then they can change it. They can influence it. The third challenge is that alignment is individual. The skill, the principle is always going to be the same, but different swimmers are going to have to find slightly different solutions. If swimmers have different limb lengths, if they have different limb masses, if they have different distribution of the mass, they have different sizes of the lungs, they float differently, these are all factors that are going to influence, perhaps subtly but significantly, how swimmers move through the water and what they have to do to optimally manage their alignment to minimize their resistance. So while the principles apply equally to all swimmers, the particular solutions may not apply in the same exact way. And so swimmers are going to have to find those solutions, and you can't necessarily know exactly what they are ahead of time. So that's another big challenge that we have to overcome if we want to help swimmers improve their alignment. So let's talk solutions. We're going to have to overcome the challenges that we just discussed. Swimmers are going to have to think about what to not do, what to get rid of. They're going to have to become aware of the subtlety, and they're going to have to figure out individually appropriate solutions. In order to do that, we can't just add a couple drills. We have to take a systematic approach. We got to think about what we have to help swimmers feel. We have to challenge them and help them execute those skills under pressure. And then we have to build that into sets that are going to develop their skills and their fitness. A full-scale attack on the skill is what's going to be required. So let's take a look at how to make that happen. The first drill we're going to talk about is ball float to X float. So this is a floating drill, a static drill. The idea here is that swimmers are going to need to learn how to use their lungs, how to leverage their lungs in order to create support in the water and to hold a more horizontal position. They're also going to have to learn how to control their legs in order to lift the legs up at the surface. They have to manage that position while moving the limbs back and forth, and that's going to create a really great challenge that helps swimmers learn how to control their position, how to control their posture, and how to float more effectively. And if they can master those skills, it's going to be a lot easier to manage and alter their position when they're actually moving forward through the water swimming breaststroke. It's a great starting point for individuals at any age. And when they can execute this skill well, it's going to be a lot easier to manage their alignment and manage their position. It's an extremely simple exercise. They're just going to get into a ball, and then they're going to expand out of that ball, and they're trying to maintain their position as effectively as they can on the surface of the water. You can have them move their arms. It doesn't have to be an X. You can go into an I or any other shape you want. The key idea is they have to learn how to lean into the water, create pressure with their lungs, and then create tension in the legs to hold the legs up at the surface. The better they can do this in a static position like this, the easier it's going to be when they're moving forward through the water. Next strategy is what I call the alignment progression. The goal here as we move through the different tasks is to minimize the increase in resistance and to maintain as great alignment as possible. So swimmers are going to start on the surface of the water, just dolphin kicking without breathing. Obviously in that position, they're not going to be creating a lot of resistance. Then they're going to add the pull. So no air breaststroke with fins. and they're going to try to maintain as much of that alignment as they can, still trying to create as little resistance as they can. Then they're going to go up down breaststroke with fins while they breathe every other stroke. Again, how much resistance can they eliminate? How aligned can they stay throughout the entire 25 or whatever distance you're doing? Then they're going to go breaststroke with fins. So now they add a breath every stroke. Again, can they find a way to maintain great alignment, keep everything in line as much as possible? How close can they get to what they were feeling during the dolphin kick with fins on the surface? Last one, they take the fins off, go regular breaststroke. And again, now they're adding the kick in. Can they still create as much alignment as possible and minimize the increase in resistance even though they're adding the legs? So for swimmers that aren't aware of what they're doing, so we're giving them a great sensory target with that first rep, and then they're trying to maintain that as they add different components of the breaststroke. So it's a real sensory challenge. The goal here is to start with perfect, great alignment when they're doing dolphin kicking. There shouldn't be much resistance that they're creating, and they're trying to minimize increases as they move through that. Really simple in concept, but really effective because it allows them to actually feel these skills and practice executing these skills. So we start here with dolphin kick on the surface, and you can see he's just moving through. There's not going to be a lot of resistance as he goes through. Then he's going to add the pull and still trying to stay as level as possible, trying to keep everything forward without disrupting his alignment. Next, he's going to breathe every other stroke. Again, trying to keep everything moving forward, trying to keep as little resistance as possible to maintain as great alignment as possible to keep things as easy as possible. Last one is now going breaststroke with fins, so regular breathing, still trying to keep everything as aligned as possible, keeping resistance as low as possible. And after that, you're just doing regular breaststroke, trying to keep that same great alignment, even though you're now adding the kick in, which is going to create more resistance. The goal is to minimize the amount of resistance that gets added. Because the head has such a strong influence on the hip position, we're going to alter the head position to alter the hip position. And so when we do that, swimmers can start to feel what's happening with the hips and how the head position influences that. Over time, they can start to figure out how do you keep their hips up and how do they keep the hips forward. So that way they create as little resistance as possible to create as much speed as possible. So there's a lot of different options here. You can have swimmers go with their head down. You can have them go with their alternating the head down. So one stroke head down, one stroke regular. You can have them go head up. You can have them go alternating head up, where they go one stroke with their head up and then one stroke normal. You can even have them alternate between no breath and then head up and go back and forth between that. There's a ton of different ways to do this, and they're all effective at helping swimmers learn and figure out and perceive what's happening with the hips when they take that breath and how they can change that and influence that by changing how they breathe. So this is head up breaststroke here, and as you see, his hips are going to be low, and that's exactly what we're looking for, so he can feel and he can understand what happens to the hips when the head's held in an unnaturally high position, or even when the head comes up in an unnaturally high position, even temporarily during that breath. Here we've got no breath breaststroke, and so here he's going to be minimizing the amount that his head comes up, and he's going to keep everything moving forwards, and that's going to have more of a forward effect on the hips. It's not going to push them down quite as much, and swimmers can feel that, become more aware of what happens when the breath is kept really low and how that impacts the hips. With this drill, he's going to breathe every other stroke, and so the impact of the breath becomes more obvious because he's feeling on alternating stroke cycles what happens when the head's higher, what happens when the head's lower, and he can try to minimize the difference between the two to still get a great breath while keeping the hips up in alignment with each stroke cycle. While breaststroke with flutter kick can be used for a lot of different ways, for a lot of different reasons, here we're going to use breaststroke with flutter kick to improve alignment. So when adding a flutter kick, we're going to flatten out the stroke. There's not going to be as much up and down motion, and that means the hips are going to be up higher in the water. They're going to stay there, and they're going to be more stable. So those are all things that we're looking for, especially when swimmers are having trouble with alignment. There's too much up and down motion. So we're going to flatten out the stroke, keep the hips up, and then keep the hips stable in that position that we're looking for, that position of lower resistance with better alignment. And so when swimmers can start to feel a supported hip position, they can start to create it, they can start to influence it, they can start to change it. They can start to feel what it's like to just kind of slide through the water with everything riding right at the surface, and they can figure out how to make that happen. Once they can feel it by using the flutter kick, they can start to try to recreate that when they add a breaststroke kick back in. So here we've got breaststroke and flutter kick, and relative to regular breaststroke, his hips are going to stay up, they're going to stay stable, they're going to stay in the same basic position as he moves through the water, which is what we're really looking for, which is what we're really trying to accomplish. So the more he can do that, the more effective he's going to be at creating great alignment and maintaining that alignment, and then he just has to try to make it happen during regular breaststroke. Next up is training aids. The goal here is to use training aids to help create more awareness of alignment and how much resistance is being created with any activity. As we mentioned before, alignment is definitely a feel skill. Swimmers have to be able to feel the resistance they're creating over their body in order to change that, in order to influence it. They don't realize how their position or their posture is influencing how much resistance they create. They're not going to be able to change it. They're not going to be able to feel it. And there are 3 different ways I like to use training aids to help facilitate this outcome. First is overspeed. So if they're going faster, that means they're going to create more drag, which means they can feel the resistance. Great way to do that is fins. You can get a lot of repetitions in, and especially with breaststroke, you can go way faster than they normally would. That allows them to feel the resistance, and then they can start to eliminate it. Clothing is also really effective as well. It exaggerates the resistance because of either a t-shirt or shorts or whatever, and they can feel that as they move through the water. Even better, when they take the clothing off, now they're going to feel the water flowing over their shoulders, flowing over their hips, flowing over their skin, and they're going to be able to really feel what's happening, and they're going to be really able to feel that extra pressure because they're not as aligned as they normally are. Finally, we can add a weight belt as well. So that's going to exaggerate the sinking of the hips. It's also going to help them feel the hips more. And the more they can feel the movement of the hips, the more they can feel the movement of the torso, the better they're going to be able to control that because they're going to have more awareness. And it's going to kind of develop the strength to do that. And it's going to be much easier to make it happen without the weight belt when the weight belt comes off by getting practice and learning how to do it with the weight belt. So these training aids, if swimmers are struggling to feel what they're doing, this can be a really powerful strategy. Now, regardless of what strategy you use, you want to use performance challenges to force them to swim differently. So you can use speed, you can use stroke count, you can use stroke rate, you can use combinations of those, and that's going to challenge them to perform in different ways and try to achieve different performances. So if you have them go faster, it's going to change things. If you have them execute really great alignment at really slow speeds, it's going to change things. Same thing with high stroke counts versus low stroke counts, high stroke rates versus low stroke rates. We saw the differences between those 100 and 200 meter swimmers, and both skills are important to learn, but swimmers have to learn how to manage it in different ways. And by exposing them to all those different things, and then also challenging them to do things more effectively, whether in either breaststroke itself or with any of those drill strategies we talked about, this can really push them to learn. And so you want challenge, and you want challenge in different ways. Novelty, variety, they build skill. And it doesn't have to be a maximal performance challenge. Just asking swimmers to take one less stroke per 25, something like that, can be a really powerful tool. It doesn't have to be take as few strokes as possible each one. Same thing with descending. Just descending 1 to 4 can make a big difference in terms of what swimmers are feeling and experiencing, but it doesn't have to be descend 1 to 4 to all out. Just asking them to change their speed, their stroke count, their stroke rate, or some combination of those can make a big difference in terms of what they learn, what they experience, and as a benefit, it usually leads to better training as well. First set here is more skill-based, and so we're going to go 4 rounds through this. This is a variation of the alignment progression. So they're going to go dolphin kick with fins on the surface, no air breaststroke, up-down breaststroke, breaststroke, and then regular breaststroke without the fins. They're going to go 3 times ball float to X float before each repetition. That way they can really feel their alignment. They can feel the control of their body and how to manage their position on the surface. The odd rounds, they're going to go flutter kick, so it's going to be more stable. The even rounds, it's going to be a little bit more up and down motion. And by using both of those, we can help them become more aware of their alignment and how they're moving through the water. Goal here is to increase the effort each round. It doesn't necessarily have to be super fast, but you're just trying to help them learn how to execute these skills with more and more intensity. So we're changing the head position, we're changing the kick, we're taking fins off, and we're helping them feel how to move through the water with better alignment and how to manage that in different situations. This set is a little bit longer. We're going to go 4 rounds through. They're going to go 4 75s and then a 75. The 4 75s are 25 breathe every other stroke, 25 alternating head up, so 1 stroke regular, 1 stroke head up, and then 25 normal breathing. The odds will use a flutter kick, the evens will use a breaststroke kick. And number 2 and number 4 are faster. So the breaststroke ones are faster than the flutter kick ones. The goal here is to work on multiple different breathing patterns, to hold everything together, to manage alignment no matter what. So they're going to get a feel for those up and down positions on the first 2 25s and then try to put it together on the third 25. The flutter kick's going to flatten them out a little bit, and then breaststroke kick, they got to make that happen and maintain the same position. After those 4 75s, they get a chance to put it together with the 75 breaststroke. They'll take 1 less stroke per 25 with that, trying to maintain their alignment as they go through it. So we're alternating flutter and breaststroke kick. We're using different breathing patterns to really challenge their position and manage the hips. And they're using that with different kicks. And then on the final 75, they're trying to be more efficient as they go after they've already done those 475s. So we're challenging them with different ways. We're challenging them with different skills to help everything hold together in order to be more effective with maintaining their alignment. Last set is more of a speed set. So they're going to alternate between different breathing patterns. They're going to alternate between flutter kick and regular breaststroke. They're going to go strong efforts on the flutter kick ones. They're going to build the fast on the regular ones. Start with head up, then head down, alternating head up, alternating head down, and then they'll put it together with a 25 fast at the end. Now, there's another twist to this in that in round 1, those first 8 reps are with a t-shirt. Round 2, the first 8 reps are with shorts. And then round 3, there's no equipment that they need to use. So we're challenging them with different head positions, different kicks, different speed requirements, and we're using different resistance, either the t-shirt or the shorts, to help them become more aware of what they're doing and more aware of how they're moving through the water. The more awareness they have, the more effective they're going to be at creating change. And again, this is all done at pretty high speeds. They're really trying to go here. And so they're learning how to execute these skills and feel these skills at high speeds, make it happen then, and that's going to make it a lot more likely that these skills actually show up when they're going fast in competition, which is what it's all about. If you want to learn more about horizontal alignment and breaststroke, check out the video below.